not sure with documents, but let's get started. Mr. Hall cannot be here tonight, and he asked me to, as the vice chair, to take his place, which I graciously will do. So you're going to have to put up with me tonight for the time being. First thing to do is let's call to order. We've got quorum of 7. Secretary's report, Anthony.
Mr. Chair, I've reviewed the regular meeting minutes of October 19th, 2017, and I make a motion that we approve the minutes as written.
I'll second. We got a motion. We've got a second for Mr. Itinerary. Do we have any discussion? Having seen none, call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstain? Thank you very much. So be it. All right, let's go down to Treasury Report. Ms. Harder.
Yes. So enclosed or available at the meeting this evening was the October 31st, 2017 Treasurer's Report. At the end of the month, we had $6,554,853.30. $6,010,362.41 were in local funds, and $544,490.89 were in project funds. The month was a busy month in terms of receipts. You can see that the member assessments were due November 1st, so we did get a significant portion of assessments in prior to that date. We also had a significant amount of activity under student activities, as we have been having since the opening of the school year. Productivity revolving and grant funds have also been pretty active. Expenses for the month have been right in line with the budget. Did anybody have any questions?
All members in?
Yes, all members are in, yes, as of the date of this meeting.
Will we accept as written?
Seconded. We've got a chat. We've got Mr. Itinerary again, seconded. We have a second on that, so we open for discussion. Hearing none, okay, let's call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? So moved. Thank you very much, Barbara. Let's move to item number 4, student recognition. Dr. Fitz.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, it is my pleasure to recognize Zoe Martin. Zoe present? Yeah, there she is. Thank you. Usually invite our principal and assistant superintendent, Mr. Steele, to join me on these. We'll do that, please. They're with me because Zoe has a variety of skills that she's attained. She is in the class of 2019 in automotive technology. She's an Uxbridge resident. As a freshman, she was one of 2 freshmen to earn a spot in the elite edition of the Capella group of Chromatics. Since then, she has remained one of the 12 members each year. She is the vice president of our chorus group. Ms. Rosansky nominated her to take part in the high school honors performance series, and this particularly talented student submitted 2 recordings of her singing, including learning and performing a song in Italian. I do some of my Italian, not on TV.
I tell you, come on up, we got the Google Chrome right there. There we go, for the television.
Oh, okay.
She has committed herself to private voice lessons outside of school, in addition to spending extra time with our music instructor, course instructor, Ms. Rosansky, and to prepare for her nomination process and the upcoming performance. Acceptance to the elite group is a direct result of her talent, dedication, and achievements demonstrated in her application and audition recording. And the press release actually reads very favorably. Zoe will travel to New York City to perform at Carnegie Hall with students from around the world under the direction of the highly regarded conductors. So congratulations.
Italian.
No, no.
Buongiorno, come
All righty, thank you.
We also have some students who we wish to recognize. We have 2 students, Allison and Lise. Are they here?
Yes.
Would you please come forward? Please. Please, right. These two members of our student body took it upon themselves to recognize that one of our staff members was dealing with a life-threatening challenge. And they created what's known throughout the school system, and maybe throughout Massachusetts, if not New England, the NSIC Strong, which includes the bracelets, if you will, that were used as a fundraiser. Among other things, they organized some 150 of us to participate in a walk on the Boston Common as part of the national recognition for the need to continue to investigate in any challenges that someone might face. So this type of initiation, this type of creativity, this type of going outside the standard way of helping and showcasing, is all about the spirit and the culture that we promote at Valley Tech. Clearly our employers recognize that the teaming, the camaraderie, the strength of working cooperatively, and collectively and respectfully is so critical to the productivity of the workforce. And so I wanted to acknowledge it was a pleasure to join you in the Boston Common activity. It was a delightful experience and a brisk walk around the Common. I wish to publicly acknowledge on behalf of Mr. Steele, the leadership team, the school committee, and our full school community, your leadership and your fine example of community service. Well done. Thank you.
Very good. Next we have comments by student representatives, Carl and Jake.
So just recently, the BVT Student Council also took place in the walk of Boston Common for Mr. Yancek. The Student Council had about 20 to 25 members, and as Dr. Fitzpatrick said, there was about 150 students present. Last Wednesday at one of our general council meetings, we started our annual turkey run drive. This year we have 20 families, so we divided the entire student council into 20 different groups, and in our groups we take WB Mason boxes and we create Thanksgiving baskets for families in need in the BVT community. So we get turkeys, rolls, stuffing, and all the way to table setting. This year, next Tuesday, we will be running our turkey run drive, is when everyone will bring in their items, and we create our baskets, and the families come and pick them up from the school.
We also just had our fall conference recently. 40 of our members in student council attended it, and myself and another student presented a workshop at the event, and we had a guest speaker named Patrick Mallett. And our annual holiday drive is starting up on November 29th and will go until December 20th.
Any questions?
Sure.
Yes.
You know, this is the season where there's a lot of fundraising, and at the homecoming game, there's a lot of booths set up, fundraising and all. Compared to other years, how involved is the class this year? All the different levels, are you getting the same type of participation? How is it?
This year we started the year off with a very high number of members in the student council, much higher than we have in past years. We averaged out, our first meeting was about 250 to 300 people, and we've kept that number pretty strong. Right now we're still averaging between 2 and 250 people at each meeting. And definitely this year with holiday drive and turkey run, the need is much bigger, so having that many people really helps to account for that.
That's good. Keep that going.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Did you want to mention who Joe was not
Oh, sure. The chair, the chair has invited me to share any updates relative to colleagues that have alerted us that they couldn't be present. Is the conference. Attorney Hall was in earlier, picking up materials, has a family obligation, and Mr. Evelyn indicated he could not attend. But they certainly wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving, and reviewing the materials for tonight's meeting on their own.
Thank Academic department presentation, we are going to be going to another spot.
The presentation will take place right here.
Right here.
Good evening, everyone. It's with great pleasure that our math department presents to you tonight. We have 3 staff members. They're going to go through an introduction themselves. We have a PowerPoint for you and certainly some handouts as well. But we're very proud of this department. They've been pioneering a number of best practices over the years, and certainly a department for other departments to look up to. So without further ado, let's get started.
Hi everyone, I'm Jen Garrison. I am the math team leader. Also, some of you might know me as a different role as treasurer of the Teachers Association also. I've had a pleasure to work with many of you on that. Our department is comprised of 9 of us. We have 4 male staff and 5 female staff. And then, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm Jessica McKenzie. I'm one of the math department members here. And I'm Jessica Olson, also a math department member.
The first thing that we wanted to present was we're very excited about our new course pathways that we have. We've started a couple new courses, one being that we've added Honors Algebra 1 course, which is new, which helps bridge the gap from our Honors Algebra 2 grade 9 students. If they found the course too difficult, they would have had to go down to CP Algebra 1, which upset a lot of parents and students if they went from like a high level Honors Algebra 2 down to a CP. So we've now added the Honors Algebra 1, which has made students happy, parents happy. Also, we've added Algebra 1, which is for our lower level students. In the past, it's been a 2-year course where it's Algebra 1 Part 1. Then they take Algebra 1 Part 2 junior year in the past, which was after MCAS. Throughout the years, we have noticed that we see a lot of full course algebra questions on the MCAS, so we decided as a math department that we should really look into this and see what we can do to help all students. So that's why we came up with just Algebra 1. So now all of our grade 9 students have a full course of Algebra 1, which you can't wait to see what that's going to bring for grade 10, since they've all had a full year course. From there, we hope that this helps placing them in grade 10 for honors geometry and CP geometry. And then our current grade 9 students, what we are going to add in 2 years is they're going to split up the Algebra 2, which is a much harder course. It's actually almost accelerated at this school because we have a week on and a week off. So we're very excited about that. So our current grade 9 students, when they hit grade 11, they'll have Algebra 2 Part 1, and for the grade 12, they'll have Algebra 2 Part 2. So that's also what we're excited about. So essentially, we eliminated the 2-year course for Algebra 1, and now it's going to be a 2-year course at the higher level math, which makes more sense and for kids to be more successful.
Doc?
Oh, yes.
Thank you. I'd like to encourage the school committee to recognize or use the lens here of this reconfiguration and the weight and sophistication of these mathematical courses creates great preparation for the 10th grade MCAS. And so you can see there's a dovetailing here, okay? The high expectations, a lot of demands, and we're pouncing on, assessing, evaluating, and pouncing on this learning, and it's reflective of the MCAS scores that you continue to see, and directly attributable to the math department and the integration activities that happen as well. So, question?
Some questions. Maybe it's combined in another course these days, but I noticed there's no trig up there. Is that part of one of the other courses, or is trigonometry something that's not?
Grade 12.
Grade 12.
Grade 12. CP functions and trig.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I forgot about honors of statistics too. We also for next year,
Yep.
seniors will have the choice of either AP Cal, honors statistics, or functions and trigs.
Okay.
Also, when I put this up here, I didn't put the full name because it's very lengthy. All the pre-calculus are pre-calculus / introduction to trigonometry. So
Okay.
trigonometry is also in all of the pre-calculus courses.
So, is there any trig that the students get before they get to calculus? I mean, I see that one at the senior level, but Do the kids that are on a track to get into calculus?
These pre-calculus
Yeah.
classes have trig, and we
Okay.
do also have trig and geometry.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're good with that one.
I asked to speak about this slide in particular, being fairly new here to BVT. I was very impressed with the fact that vertical and horizontal alignment, or teaming, is such a priority here. Coming from a couple of schools that don't make it a priority, it has such a positive impact on both us as teachers and our students. Vertically, we need to make sure that students aren't missing any curriculum from 9th through 12th grade, make sure we're not doing too much or any unnecessary overlapping, and we're not missing any subject areas. We meet annually, and we talk about this alignment to see if there's any adjustments that need to be made. And then horizontally, we meet with each other depending on the grade level and the class that we teach. And we have regular meetings. Most of us meet every other week. And we look at assessments. We create them. We revamp them to make sure that our assessments are common. And we also, many of us are doing parallel planning, which means that if somebody has one teacher for Algebra 1 and another teacher for Algebra 1, they're receiving the same instruction, the same content, and it's pretty streamlined. It seems to be working fantastically. As a new person, I think it's wonderful. And what did I miss? And just the fact that it's made a priority here is very impressive, and I think it makes a big difference.
Yes.
Along with the teaming that you've been talking about, being a technical school, is there anything that the mathematics department does with any of the shops to kind of use some of the mathematical principles and in programs in the math academic side, but relate them to the shop environment?
So I'm drawing a blank. Well, they're going to get to, their last slide is about an initiative, a school-wide initiative called Math Problem of the Month, which will come. But pretty much all of our shops are utilizing math in some capacity. Obviously, it's different in health services when they're dealing with CCs and those sorts of measurements versus culinary. So we received a grant 2.5 years ago now from the Department of Ed to form integration teams. That team is comprised of a reading specialist or English teacher, a math teacher, and then a shop teacher. They worked together to develop lessons, went in and co-taught those lessons. So that's something that we have been doing for a number of years, but just recently revitalized that. Okay. But the Math Problem of the Month, which is going to come up for you, is done in a full integrated way to bring a real-world shop application for all students.
So, I mean, that's a great way to relate problem solving from the academic
It's
side
the whole,
to something.
like, when am I going to use this?
Yeah,
Next
exactly.
period you are, and how,
Okay.
you know, that kind of thing.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman?
Jerry.
Jerry, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
English major view. The last two principles were
I
math.
promise it won't take more than 20 minutes.
Yes, we do, so wow.
We also found early on that trying to integrate math with 18 different career technical programs was next to an impossibility. And you also had students that were also trying to become college ready at the same time. And so it was hard to drift too far away from, for example, the progressions that they showed you on the previous slide there, serving, if you will, too many masters. And I'll use manufacturing as a good example. They need trigonometry freshman year. Is perhaps where you were looking at some of those, saying, where's the trig, and do you have to wait till senior year to get the trig? And the answer is no. The machining teachers, for example, teach what I would call just-in-time trigonometry in a very practical way, in a practical setting. I know Jen, you've helped Mr. Woodward with things like that, help him refine his teaching techniques. Mr. Woodward is not a math teacher, but he certainly can find an angle when he needs it, and has his whiteboard right there in their related room close by that they go and they teach their just-in-time academic topic, if you will, as it's needed in the shop setting. And you can multiply that out throughout the whole building, measurements in culinary, medical math, in health services, etc. And so what I found that had worked better than trying to integrate, say, 18 shops into a curriculum progression like that was to give access to and time for collaboration for these folks to go out and work with shop teachers. Part of what that grant was about, and others like it, was to give them opportunities to work together, say, hey, here's what works well for us on teaching trigonometry, for example, to help folks like Mr. Woodward, for example, be better at presenting his concepts when he needs to present them. So, you know, it's kind of integration, but going back the other way. So we've tried it in both directions and find that it works well.
Thank you.
So we also try and incorporate a lot of technology in what we do in the math department. So one of our biggest things is having online textbooks and resources for all of our students. We were really excited this year because we just got a new pre-calculus textbook. Our old textbook didn't come with an online edition, and this one does. It's actually that image over there on the left. Is our online pre-calculus textbook, and it comes with resources such as online videos the students can access when they're confused, self-check quizzes that are graded online where the students can actually check themselves and see if they are doing things correctly or incorrectly in order to study. And there's just some really amazing resources on there, including help for us as well with test generator tools that allow us to look through giant tool banks of questions to create really good assessments for our students. Also, a lot of us have teacher websites. A favorite is Weebly. A lot of us use Weebly sites, and we post our weekly homework there. We post when our tests and quizzes are. Some of us also post our notes so that students have access to what we had on the board that day. And I know Justin Swick uses Microsoft Teams. That's a newer one that the school is working with, where it's, I'd almost describe it like a Twitter the way it is, where it's stream of conscious, and you can post things, but you can post assignments, and you can post just notes and homework and things like that on it. So it's a really interesting thing.
And I just to explain it a little bit more, I use it in lieu of a website. That is my website. The students can access it through their BVT email accounts, and they can get on that way. And there's 3 primary areas that I use. I'll use a calendar where I can post assignments so they can see past, current, and future assignments. And then for those students that use Apple products, I've been uploading PDFs of everything so they can download it onto their iPad in the class, write notes right on it, do their homework right on it. They show me, they can submit it to me. Those people that aren't using Apple products, I've been using the class notebook in Microsoft Teams, and I can upload the same material there. The neat thing about this is as we're doing notes and reviewing homework in class, that is saved in real time up so that the students can see it. If they're out for the day, they can look at it while we're doing it, or they can look at it after. So I'm still fairly new to it. I'm still looking to explore a little bit more and use a few other features more regularly, but it's been pretty neat.
I'm trying to learn all that stuff.
Yeah, right.
Old school. I'm trying.
And on top of notes, I actually even will sometimes for my AP Calculus students, because it's a particularly challenging course, even videotape. You can videotape your smartboard and send them a video of the actual lesson so that if they're feeling like they're behind, they can catch up that way. Another great thing that we have, we're very lucky as a school that we have classroom sets of TI-84 calculators, which is really great for our students to use, and we try and incorporate those into our classes as much as possible. So for standardized test prep, MCAS Math Camp was actually new last year. We redid it last year. So it wasn't new last year. We had done it for years, but we redid the entire camp to make it 11 different sessions with different topics that show up on the MCAS primarily. And we had different teachers, different days. It ran starting in the end of March through May, right up to when the exam was. And so there were 2 sessions a week, one on Tuesday, one on Thursday, each with a specified topic, so students could be a little bit more choosy about, well, I actually don't really understand operations with polynomials, so that's something I really want to go to that session because I'm not sure how to handle this. So it gave students a little bit of flexibility in learning what they specifically felt they needed to do. And we were also, as a department, encouraging our students to come as much as possible.
I'm just going to say I probably should mention that each of us took either a Tuesday or a Thursday just to make sure that we all rotated through, and it was all voluntarily. So just to make sure that everybody got a chance to.
So on top of that, we also, in our geometry classes, I know a lot of us build a lot of MCAS into the curriculum. A lot of us assign shop homework assignments that include MCAS questions in order to help prepare our students for those exams. So it's something that's a year-long process, even with this MCAS camp as being an extra support.
We have a question over here from Anthony.
What type of attendance are we getting for the math camp? Is it just a handful of students? Is it a full classroom?
It varied from week to week last year.
Based on the topic?
Mhm.
And do you find it's all ranges of the different class, whether it's Algebra 1 or Algebra 2 honors, you find you're getting a good range of students that attend?
Yes.
Okay, great.
We also do offer an SAT prep course. In the fall, it's for seniors, and in the spring, it's for the juniors. That runs for 8 weeks. They do a practice test in the beginning, and then they do a post-test at the end. And it's a 3-hour course where it's split with English, so each student spends an hour and a half on math, and then an hour and a half on English, and we split the group into 2 groups and swap who they're working with.
And then my favorite, my last slide of the night, our math problem of the month. I don't know, I've been here quite a while, and I can't recall a year without math problem of the month that Doc helps us with. It's a Valley Tech tradition. Students, actually, I have a. And I have one.
You're not eligible
I don't have
to
enough
enter.
copies, but if you wanted to take a peek at what it is, it's.
I wouldn't worry about it.
Give them more time or sign them up for your help session.
Jeff, don't want to take it.
I'm gonna get my TI 30.
Students complete the math problem of the month in their math classes, and all correct answers go into a raffle. And the raffle's chosen every month with Dog, and they are awarded $50 in ones.
We haven't gone to the change yet.
The students think they've like won the lottery. In order to showcase that, I actually did a bulletin board in the math wing so kids can get excited about, if they won, and to get excited about the next month also. So I'm very proud of that. Any questions? Yes.
I got a hypothetical question. You had mentioned that meeting and you look at curriculum. And then every other week you meet to see where you at, what's your learning tendencies, what's happening, and so forth. Have you had the experience of those things that got out of sync? So that, you have one group of students that are way ahead of another group of students, and you're not, and if you're out of sync, how do you get back in sync?
My short time I've been here, I haven't, but I don't know.
Typically, we all seem to be on the same
That's amazing.
track. Yeah.
That's great.
Because I think we touch base so often, and we all work well as a unit
So the frequency of the meetings help to
make
keep
sure that we're all
keep everybody on the same general path.
correct.
Okay, because I've been hearing from other systems that I know that they get way out of bounds with each other.
Yeah.
And in some cases, they end up at the end of the year where they should have taught, up to page 97 and they're only up to page 46.
Right.
Something of that nature, they get out of whack. So the frequency of the meetings help to
Definitely.
precursor that so that it doesn't take place.
Definitely.
That pretty much how it works?
It's formal and informal, and I think maybe like 2 to 3 days we've been off, but that's all I've.
That's about it.
Okay.
We try and test around similar times, and
Oh,
that
yes.
keeps it on track for us too, because since we have those common assessments, we have these benchmarks we have
Gotcha.
to meet.
Gotcha. So testing helps as another spoke in the wheel on that as well.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate that.
That would be my observation. The regular assessments that are from the get-go, from even before students enter, are not part of the admissions process, but they're part of positioning students and to build upon their skill set.
Okay.
They have the benefit of that research to make adjustments rather than be surprised.
Right.
So they're in sync.
One other aspect of that is through Curtis's help, we secure Title IIA money, which is for teacher quality, and that gives us funds for substitutes, so the departments are able to meet during the school day as a whole. They lock themselves in a conference room and kind of battle it out over curriculum and things as needed. We try and do that 2 or 3 times a day when they have a solid 6 hours to be able to do that. So that's something they do in addition to their regular meeting time.
Great.
which is
There's
very
3 good
helpful.
remedies right there.
Yep.
These can help. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, we're at now number 7, Facilities Subcommittee. John Lavin.
Yes, the facilities subcommittee met last night, and you know, a nice update of what's going on. The scoreboard on the football field, the sign for Unibank is now in auto body, it's being painted and ready to be assembled shortly. But they're not going to do anything until, you know, have a dedication to the sign, Unibank, until the beaver is done for the top, and they're working on that right now. As soon as that's done and everything's assembled, Doc will set up a time for Unibank to come down and speak about the sign. Doc, I don't know if you want to.
Sure, we communicated with Unibank dignitaries, and the preference was to wait until the students had done some finishing work. I believe you referenced that.
Yeah, the beaver.
Yeah, and that the teachers wanted to maximize the learning potential of the student involvement. We respect that. We're not a production shop. Okay, and so when we felt it was a more finished state, then we do so-called ribbon cutting.
Right.
And the Unibank people had indicated they had no problem with that. Okay, we got courtesy of the response back.
That's a good thing. And any questions on that before I?
Well, not on that.
Okay. The second one is the front sign. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but the cones are out there. I think they were supposed to pour concrete today, but I don't think it happened due to the weather. But the forms are going to get poured. Everything's going along. And hopefully by the middle of December, if weather permitting, we'll stop walking. And by spring, we should be having a full sign out there. And also the other was, again, the committee is, you know, proactive about things in the building, and we had, you know, asked Mr. Brochu to have somebody come in and look at our roof, and they did a complete walkthrough of the whole roof, and they found a few places in the 300 wing which we haven't done the upgrade on yet, and repaired it, and it was like a $1,900 fix was the best investment, I think, to save, you know, the roof. And they checked even the stuff that's already been done, which is part of the warranty package. If you saw how it was done, we need to make sure we have a preventive maintenance program to make sure that our roofs last longer than, you know, if we don't watch what we're doing, of course, it'll dilapidate. So, and it's also part of the material suppliers warranty that we do have a preventive maintenance program to check. So it was really worth the $1,900 to have them, and they did find some seams that were loose, and they repaired them. That was part of the whole cost, so I think it was a great thing. Yes, yeah.
Kind of building on that, over the past couple of years, we've had to do some larger projects with the field and the roof project. It would be good for my own understanding, maybe for the committees, if one of these, at one of our committee meetings in the future, if maybe we could have a look forward as to, do we have an estimate or an evaluation of maybe some of the bigger facilities projects that might be looming out there? May not be right now, but you know, maybe in 2 years we need to do something with parking lots or plumbing or something like that. But it would be good just to have that kind of a brief to the committee, that is there anything in the next, you know, 3 or 4 years that we'll be looking at down the road with having to do some more extensive work.
Okay, I'll wait there.
That's a good point.
Yes, and let's see, what else was there?
If I may, I think the parking lot was one that they had talked about, I think, a year or so ago,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I just used that as an
No, I understand, but we sealed, but you're right.
Yeah.
There's something that we just basically sealed, with it. We haven't
Yeah.
really gone and repaired the whole
Right.
thing yet, so
Yeah.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
Because that's gonna come to roost someday.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the other one we talked about, I think you all have an email about the carpentry has now a new outside building now, like a Quonset hut type thing to store all their lumber and material for their outside building project. And they're in the process of erecting it right now. So,
It's like a prefab center.
yeah.
Cool.
Construction technology.
Does anybody who was on the committee have anything else?
Anything else, sir?
No, I think that's it, unless there's any other questions.
Any other questions, or anybody? Hearing seeing none, let's move it on. Assistant Superintendent Curtis.
Thank you. So on the agenda tonight, we're going to be looking at the E&D certification status and a vote of that E&D that's been certified. So if you'll turn to item 8.1. This came in from the Department of Revenue. As I had mentioned at the last meeting, we were prioritized a little bit below the cities and towns because of their tax rates. We did get it just a few days later. And two key numbers you probably want to look at are the amount that you are allowed to be certified and maintain in the district without giving any funds back to our member towns, which we're not there yet. And it's 5% of the FY18 budget, the budget that we're in now, which was $1.1 million. That's the amount you're allowed to have in your coffers in terms of E&D. We actually certified in at $657,999. So it was roughly half of that amount. I think everybody gets a copy of this at this point, right? So with that said, we would like, as we usually do upon certification, is to make a transfer of the sum of money over to our capital projects fund. And if you'll turn to item 8.2, you'll see there's a blue sheet there with a motion on it. And we pull the information right out of our budget book that gives us the authorization to spend, or I should say, to transfer up to $500,000. This is part of the budget book that is approved by the towns. And this allows us to accomplish many needed capital projects throughout the year that we otherwise wouldn't be able to afford. So with that said, I've given you a recap at the bottom of the amount that was certified at $657,999, and a vote of $250,000 is what we're seeking, which will leave us just under $408,000 remaining that can be voted for other purposes. I'll remind the committee that traditionally we have offered some of this, and usually up to $250,000 as a direct offset to member assessments. So at a very minimum, we will likely be bringing that as a motion as part of the budget to vote another $250,000 of the 407 remaining. All right, that will be a direct offset in terms of the member assessments. So with that,
I'll make the motion, Curtis.
Second. We have a motion. We get a second from John. Do you want to read it, or are we all set? Everybody has a copy in front of them, so everybody's set with that with 8.2?
Yeah.
No need to
motion
read
is
it.
as presented.
As presented, okay. Indeed, so we've got a motion, we've got a second. Do we have any discussion? Doc?
A couple things. Curtis highlighted on 8.1, the green sheet, I just want to emphasize, as he pointed out, first of all, Curtis, working with the treasurer and the auditing firm, gave this a priority in advancing it to the Department of Revenue so we could have this judgment. Many of the regional systems in the state have not been able to work with that level of efficiency or that speed, and therefore they don't have the benefit of a certified Department of Revenue E&D number as we do. Curtis mentioned the total 5% of the budget is some $500,000 higher than the actual number that we have available. And so that's not insignificant, to say the least. I mean, we're glad that we continue to have the magnitude we do, 657,000. However, it makes it very challenging when you only have that amount of money. Okay, and you're 500 under what you're allowed, 500,000 under. And so, nevertheless, we, Curtis and I, chatted about the appropriateness and support for the motion that is before you to give the budget subcommittee some leverage as it plans, but doesn't commit the limited number of dollars we have available. There have been a number of presentations about the facilities subcommittee and requests to look at other priorities that the facilities subcommittee has not been able to advance. This is one of the few places that the district can support facility or capital improvements without building it into the budget. So, all that being said, I encourage you to vote in favor of the motion before you, but I want to give you the benefit of additional insight.
I just got one other question, if I may, and then take yours as well. Question I've got is, being the 657,000 roughly 50% of what is eligible or allowable. Is that the lowest we've ever been in terms of in your recent memory here? I don't need to go back.
It is. It
Seems to me that it feels like it's fairly low relative. I usually had a pretty good comfort level. It's more like 2/3 of the total.
Yeah,
This seems more like a 50%, so it seems like we're down about a 1/4%.
Yeah, we've been in the 8s and the 9s and.
Right, yes. Okay, so this is indeed, my senses are right, this is actually, and it's good you spoke on it because I was going to bring it up as a question. It is something that is less than we've ever had before. Is that fair?
It is.
One of the reasons, Mr. Chairman, is it's less residues because the district, with the support of the school committee, has self-funded its roof repair project. Okay, so we've dipped into our reserve to do that rather than ask the towns to enter into more debt to do it.
Yep.
Okay?
As a consequence.
It resulted, that's right, it's a direct result of fewer reserves.
Yep.
And
We have another question? Yes, okay.
I'm just looking at the E&D calculation, and one of the categories here is other receivable withdrawn accounts and deficits. And if there are a few of the accounts here that are overdrawn, that should be something we look pretty closely at as we put the budget together for next year and figure out why those accounts are overdrawn. Maybe we're purchasing something now that we thought we needed next year, but we ended up needing it now. But whatever the reason is for that overdrawn account.
If I may, we recognize that, and what the committee witnesses as a trust we recognize as we get closer to the fiscal year, kind of April, May, June kind of, that the business office offers line item amendment changes to address.
And there's nothing here that's really egregious.
No, it's all.
It's a caution.
And it's used as a tool for subsequent planning. We look at that. I guess at the municipal level, they usually underfund snow and ice removal, kind of thing, because they know they have more flexibility with that. Some of the changes are driven by needs identified to students that weren't here previously. And so Curtis receives, the business office receives requests to redirect, and so that drives a change that wasn't known at the time of the budget. But we do use that process and always present the rationales for line item changes to be authorized by the school committee.
so let me offer another piece to that. What you're looking at the upper section is revolving funds, and only the copy center is in a deficit.
Okay.
And we've been in the process.
Yeah, I know
of
the mix of accounts, right?
Everything else is a receivable.
Okay.
And they can't count that towards your E&D because if for some reason you didn't collect it, they would need to make sure that it was there. So once it is collected, it'll then fall out next year. All right?
Yep.
But at least know that only one of those was in a deficit.
Got it.
Yeah,
Thanks.
The other thing, and that's a good point.
That's a good point.
If I may. We've also met and reviewed the copy center practices to strengthen the way in which certain things have been handled for printing.
Okay.
All done in good faith, sometimes to help some of our member school systems and municipalities, strengthening the whole process for the
Okay, thank you.
retrieval.
You good, Anthony?
Good.
Okay, any other questions? And seeing none, I'll call for a vote on item 8.2. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those that wish to abstain? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Okay, and item 8.3 is a donation of HVAC supplies from Peter Beauregard. We had a similar donation in the prior year, and just looking for a motion to accept the donation.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any conversation on this? Any?
Just a quick one.
Yes.
The instructors are okay with what they received?
Yes, this came directly from them.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Very useful.
In terms of the items or in terms of the totals?
The items.
Oh, the items?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just sometimes, stuff comes
Yeah.
in and it shows up on their doorstep and they're not happy with it.
Yeah. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second, we have a conversation. Any other conversation on this? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. In favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? So moved. Thank you.
And the last item, Anthony, you had raised a question concerning the grants, and really from a goal perspective, what would we be looking at? A number of grants or a dollar value? And so Dr. Fitzpatrick actually generated, through his experience with grants, a nice little chart here that kind of shows the steps that you go through from a flow chart perspective to research and identify grants. So if you'll just take a look down that, Doc, you might want to step in and add anything you want to, and how that proceeds to the pre-application phase, and what Doc terms a feasibility study, where you're meeting with various people of the leadership team to determine the suitability of the grant, and then the rationale for the building phase, and writing and design phase, and then finally the implementation. This does not come without a great deal of resources behind it, meeting with people to determine what those needs are. For instance, you focus possibly on capital projects to determine whether or not there are grants out there that can meet that need. We're looking at some, related to security. Obviously, MSBA might be for the roof for that last section, which I think we have around $350,000 that we parlayed after each renovation that we've done to those roofs. But it is a carefully thought out process. I would say that the biggest piece of this is the amount of information that comes in, and I'd say Dr. Fitzpatrick is one of the main contributors to what I receive in terms of grant opportunities. Then I'm charged with going and meeting with various constituents to determine whether or not the grant, if we could even apply for it. A good example that we just had was on the Wi-Fi grant, and did extensive meetings with Rosetta and Aaron, who is her network specialist. And as hard as we tried to get that grant, in terms of justifying applying for it, there was just nothing that we needed aside from a one-to-one initiative that we could have put in there from a network infrastructure perspective. So we go through those processes and determine whether or not we can move to that very next phase. In terms of priority, I would say our first would be to protect the entitlement grants, which we roughly bring in about $500,000 or more dollars. Those are items, I wouldn't say they're free, but they're given to you by the state, and you do have to apply for them, and you have to meet the criteria behind the grant in order to receive it. And then you have to also monitor it, do the report out on it, and provide backup for the supporting expenditures. Another quick example too, we just had I think it was Bridges to College grant. There were 3 recipients that were going to be given funds. We had about $267,000. And it had to tie into post-secondary, obviously, and we went through extensive. I think I probably put about 3.5 days worth of work into that. You'll see on the additional handout I have here, when you're looking at the potential of getting that, and I think I just received word that 30 applicants applied for it, and there's going to be 3 awards. The likelihood of getting it is probably not great, but we put our best foot forward, put the time in, and we keep our fingers crossed that our proposal is outstanding.
So, earlier in the committee meeting, we had a presentation by the math department, and we were told about the teaming and how Jennifer Garrison has time within her department so they can shut the door, go over curriculum, and kind of brainstorm on new ideas. In that type of scenario, would Jennifer have this type of information so that whether it's her or any other departments, we can keep the grant engine going, and maybe for some of the smaller things that are directly applicable to their departments? Not saying they spend a lot of time on this, but it could be something that, would Jennifer be able to
Yes.
obtain grants and maybe find things that are in line with her goals for the department, and then go through this process and kind of work at the more local, maybe the smaller grants that your staff might not look directly into because they may not be big dollars?
We do that now.
Okay.
The Ed Foundation, we send those out to all the instructors.
Okay.
I also have instructors that send me information, can we apply for this grant? When they do that, that just triggers a joint meeting between the
good.
two of us to determine whether or not we should pursue it. Because you have to get into the specifics of what the grant requirements are to determine whether or not we could even apply.
But
So
but they are empowered to be able to do that, and they are engaging and offering ideas and possibilities, right?
yes, and then I
Okay.
get it and I read it over and from my perspective, make any changes that I feel like are necessary to, you know, or to shine a little bit more. Because I know a lot of times people are just in a shell of the data they're trying to present or the narrative, and then they leave it up to me to then go back and kind of reconstruct.
Okay.
So yes, we do that and encourage it because those things, as we say, even in this item 8.5 here, it's a 2-page document, that a lot of these smaller grants can be very time consuming. And the report out requirements can be time consuming as well and can last 3 and sometimes 5 years. So you have to really go through the process of determining, is that amount of money, is it worth the effort that it takes on the back end, you know, after you've applied. So I think I want to point out a couple of things on this page that we presented at our administrative retreat, and just things to think about and to make sure that this is aligned with our mission and our goals. And do we actually have that obligation to continue it after it's done? We had gotten a grant through one of our funders for our transition room, and they gave it to us for 3 years, $60,000 a year, and that was Metro West Health Foundation, and we were required to bring that into our budget. Well, on the front end of that, it obviously is a great deal, but if you're not able to incorporate that into your operations, then you're failing the grant requirement. So you always have to make sure, and you never know where you're going to be at 3 years from now. I mean, if y'all have seen that our unreserved fund balance is certified is coming down, we really need to start thinking about that 250 we are allotting back to the towns. Is that sustainable if that continues to shrink? Because as you know, when that plops over and has to be funded, you don't have to have an expenditure increase. They're just having to now, I guess, come up with that $250,000 collectively, and it raises their assessment percentage. So it's all about planning down the road and how some of this stuff might actually affect our operations. And I think we went over the bottom is the amount of effort required to complete the application and follow up on the reporting requirements, because some of these grants, they are very small, and they do have interesting reporting requirements because they're trying to gather data and see, is what you did something that can be replicated in another system, and does it provide meaningful data? And then I think on the other side, this is just something I hope everybody will take a second to look at. Again, this is what we discussed at our administrative retreat, to see some of the considerations we go through or should be going through as we're making decisions to apply for grants. I'll say from a reality perspective, I am reacting most of the time. It's very, very difficult to pre-plan. I can do that on the entitlement grants because I've got time when the summer is starting. But as it gets further into the year and you get the last of these grant opportunities coming at you, it is difficult to do anything other than respond to a deadline. You are conducting meetings along the way to try to gather data, but until that report is due, other priorities can find a way to sneak in. So that's just a quick overview of, you know, how we view the grant process here. We do believe protecting the entitlements is paramount. I think we get around $100,000 or so in other competitive private grants. That's also important. And then for the other state grants that drive an MSBA project, that can be $500,000 in the Mass Skills Capital. Those are also very important, but they are very much driven by the state and our need at that point, especially on a roof project. As you know, we have to come up with 100% of those funds, even though we're reimbursed that roughly, just say 50%. But if we don't have that, we can't even apply. So we go through great pains trying to transfer monies to come up with that until we get the reimbursements, and then we pay back our other capital projects. It's an interesting set of journal entries that has to take place, but we have to show that we are capable of funding. Much like the receivables that we get hit for, if something were to happen to the MSB and the money was not there, we would have to fund it. That's why they want to make absolutely certain you've got it in-house. But we've never been failed by the state on an MSBA project, so the likelihood of that happening is probably nil. But that's another pot between $300,000 and $500,000 that, as the need arises or as the grant opportunities are there, we can apply for.
Okay, Anthony?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Good job on that, because I've been through it with the apprenticeship fund with Carpenters Union, that I'm no longer involved. But it's the follow-up, it's the paperwork, it's the making sure that everything's done. So you say you have $60,000, but then if things don't fall in line, you don't have $60,000, you only get $30,000 because, and then it has a lot to do with work opportunities and guaranteed employment. Like a bunch of these grants, they want you to guarantee that there's going to be a job at the end of it, and we can't do that. We can't say you're going to get a job when you get the grant, So we've been through that a lot too. You did a really good job on that, and it's very cumbersome, the paperwork, especially at the end, to make sure that you hit all the goals that they wanted you to have. So.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
And then in your package, one final thing is a budget report. And if you just flip to the very back page, I wanted to bring to your attention that at this point out of our budget, we've got about $3 million remaining that is not encumbered in the form of salaries, purchase orders, or through actual expenditures. And that's about 13.25% of the budget that remains at this point. And again, keep in mind, salaries are a huge piece of that because it shows the full encumbrance there. That will eventually just get paid out on its own. It's already been provided for. But it lets you know it's not a ton of money that remains, and we're just about to hit the end of November, and we've got several months left. But it will eventually go down. I just want to at least point that out to you and let you know where we stood here today. Okay?
Thanks, Curtis.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Yeah. All set with that. Let's go Anthony Steele, please. Assistant Superintendent Director report.
Mr. Vice Chairman, if it's okay with you in the committee, Mrs. Swayze would like to join us.
Oh, thank you, Simon. Great.
Okay.
I'd rather have Mrs. Swayze.
Oh, okay. I guess,
But if we have to have it.
oh, there's only one chair. Right?
We thought he used it. I know.
They use it. Let's bring from the back room.
I thought he used all of his time already.
All right, we can run some. Yeah, let's keep going and we can pass that down.
Not on the radar.
Pass those down. Thank you, Mr. Swayze.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Finn, everyone. Warm welcome. Many of the items I have tonight have to do with Ms. Swayze's areas and areas of expertise as well. So it's appropriate that she was already here at the meeting. She can join me up here for some of these presentations. The first item up, 9.1, is the Abigail Adams Award Ceremony. This is, as many of you are aware, a state scholarship opportunity. It's awarded to our top performing MCAS achievers. It is essentially a scholarship for free tuition for the recipients to a four-year degree program. It does not cover room and board or text, but it does cover tuition for 4 years, providing they maintain their GPA. This year, we awarded 75 of our students the Abigail Adams Award. We just had recently had a ceremony to give that to them. That was somewhat of a surprise. And we do take our annual photo, somewhat creative opportunity there. Sometimes you'll remember this from annual reports and things of that nature.
Saw it on the website.
This year we did 3 exclamation points as photographed from the ceiling of the competition center. So I have not seen the photo yet, but it looked like 3 exclamation points.
Okay.
Looks good. It does feature myself, Doc, and Miss Swayze, and I believe the dots of those exclamation
I look
points.
like Lauren Commerce.
So anyhow, a nice achievement for our students. It's been consistent. Basically, it's the top 25% of the class, correct? And so that number has been fairly consistent. It's right around 75. As the class size grows, if there are ties, the state awards on the favorable side of that. I think the high one might be the 82, 83 one year. 75 is a product of 25% of the current class, their highest achievers. Right, so nice job by them. Any questions on 9.1? Seeing none. The second item here, 9.2, the National Honor Society induction was just last night. We also have an induction ceremony at that time for the National Technical Honor Society. We have a total of 96 members at this point in time. 112 applied this year and 70 were accepted. That is a rather rigorous application process. Some of the changes this year did increase rigor. One of them was the submission of an electronic portfolio. That was a new advent there. As well as we had raised, you all voted as a committee, we raised the GPA to 96 average GPA, which obviously does indeed raise the bar for acceptance into it. Nonetheless, we still had 112 students who made those initial qualifications, and again went on from there to submit portfolios. Nice event attended by, let's see, we had a couple hundred in the audience. We have our returning members and of course the new inductees. All were honored, and we celebrated the pillars of the standards essentially of the NHS and THS. Those both societies are led by Ms. Moynihan and Ms. Mnuchin, and they do a fine job. They've done a fine job now for several years for us with both of those organizations, as well as a faculty council that consists of 7 faculty members who volunteer their time. Each of those 112 portfolios is reviewed 7 times by each faculty member. So they spend a considerable amount of time reviewing student work and evaluating criteria. Quite a process. When those students do eventually gain membership, and furthermore to maintain membership, because they will be asked to leave if they don't keep with the expectations, it's quite significant. A very significant community service expectation, between 20 to 25 hours in the summer, 10 to 15 hours per term per trimester. It's quite an expectation on them from all fronts, from scholarship to community service and etc. Anything you'd add to that?
Sure. Doc? Yeah, as outlined, the Honor Society is a very challenging, stringent requirement, and it is conceivable that one or more constituent might not be happy that a son or daughter, grandson or granddaughter didn't make this particular round. All right, we create multiple opportunities to be successful. We would encourage anyone to try again, benefit from the experience. So it wouldn't be a surprise to us for you to encounter someone, given the interest in being part of the organization, somebody who didn't meet the standards set by the policy and by the guidelines, but we certainly would encourage them to, learn from the experience and try again, do anything we can to be helpful, improve their chances.
It's juniors and seniors?
Yes, it is juniors and seniors.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting to keep in mind is that as I even entertained or as part of the process, I am you come to see for an appeal for admissions and things like that. And I look at the criteria and I look at the students, and it does dawn on you that we essentially have 1,225 really great students here. And so these are the students who are trying to distinguish themselves as the best of the best. And what does that mean? And so you could look at any one individual student and say, oh, come on, geez, they're great. Look at this kid. Who wouldn't want to be this kid or have this student? And then when you realize that the job of the faculty council is to look at all of them. I didn't read all 112 applications and try to apply some standard of consistency to it. And you have to have an appreciation for that. Essentially, they want to let them all in, but they're also very adherent to the standards of the NHS and NTHS and what those mean. Even students following directions. That the students who ultimately wish to be recognized and wear the stole are not the ones that you remind to go to meetings or remind them that they have to do community service or so on and so forth. Part of it is the personal responsibility and so forth. So they really do have high expectations on them. And you kind of contextualize it and realize it in that sense of what it means to be the best of the best or the elite of the elite at Valley Tech. It's quite a distinction to earn and keep. It's impressive. Okay. 9.3, Vocational Career and Curriculum Night. We're actually underway right now. It's the presentation you hear going on in the room next to us. When I stepped out a few moments ago, I went to go check on a couple of my shops. When I say my shops, the administrative team broke up all 18 shops so that we each took a couple for the purpose of coaching. I'm working closely one-on-one with referred to as our liaisons. We're liaisons to those shops, but setting up panels. What Voc Career Night is about is essentially the freshman students are in the 6th of 7 exploratories, and they're about to make a very big decision at the end of that process as to what shop they wish to pursue for the next 4 years. This is an opportunity. It's an evening that we added, much like we have Parents' Night, which became Academic Curriculum Night. As you recall, we negotiated an extra night with staff, an evening with staff, and this was how we decided to best spend it with our parents' input. This is an opportunity tonight for the particularly vocational staff to meet with these parents, the freshman parents, again, their sons and daughters in the 6th of 7 exploratories, to talk about what their career area has to offer. They have panels set up in each of the shop consisting of not only the instructors, current students, graduates or alums, and business owners. Sometimes it intersects with both. You might have some alums who are business owners who are there to represent industry and talk about career offerings and things of that nature. We dovetail this with substantially upgrading the shop profiles on our website so that parents could have more takeaway data on expected salary ranges, job projections, all of that type of career information, so that they can essentially have an enhanced conversation with their son or daughter about making a very large decision about what career to pursue, at least what career to train in for the next 4 years here. So this is the second year we've done this. It was substantially modified this year based on parent feedback and parent input. I promised the parents tonight when I greeted them that we would likewise be surveying them again to see how it went and what kinds of considerations and modifications we might make to continue to improve and refine the evening. At the same time this is going on, as you know, we have more than one instructor in the shop. We are also receiving parents of 10th, 11th, and 12th graders to talk about what the curriculum is in the shop for the remaining 3 years. So any of the 10th, 11th, and 12th grade parents are welcome to come in on this evening as well. They're not going through the presentation of what the career has to offer. They've already bought the cow. You know, I like that. Okay. This is what to expect, you know, with the shop for the next 3 years, what to study, when to do it, when would we be looking at things like co-op, when would be the time to start looking at colleges, programs, partnerships with employers, things of that nature. So it's the curriculum night, and it's also the vocational career night. And it's the name we gave it. So far, so good. That's why I snuck out again. We were all kind of eager and anxious to see how it's going, trying to again do the best job we can for our parents and our students to make those decisions.
It may be early to tell, and of course there's obviously inclement weather, but does it appear to be the parents of ninth graders are in greater attendance than the other grades given?
A little bit tricky to tell. I'll tell you why. We had an opening session with the ninth grade parents. 10th, 11th, and 12th grade parents were just simply to come in and report to the shop. So they never gathered in mass per se. At this point, I would assure you there's more freshman parents here than anything. They have the most to achieve tonight, I guess you could say. You're right.
Logical.
Okay. Okay.
Performance award?
Performance award verification is a vote. Before we go to the vote, obviously we want to provide you with some information first. We handed out 2 pieces of paper to you. The first is performance award program data, and the second was a colored spreadsheet consisting of the COP performance attainments. This is particularly, Becky helped pull some of this data together. Perhaps it would help if I remind you of the performance award criteria, and Becky can help by highlighting the achievement of said criteria. So just to remind you, this is every 3 years. This is for the 2014 to 17 cycle, and the attainment of it translates to a 0.75 performance bonus for our staff, and that's all staff across the board. Is dependent on the following conditions being met. First pertains to a 4-year graduation rate, sometimes referred to as completion rate, and essentially focuses on the class of 2017. Mrs. Swayze, you want to tell a little bit about that?
So for the first criteria, the state sets a standard for all schools in which they need to meet for their graduation requirement. And the state target that was given to Valley Tech was 80% graduation rate, which we then far exceeded. As you can see, the BVT class of 2014 was a graduation rate of 98.5. The class of 2015 was a graduation rate of 98.9. The class of 2016 was a graduation of 99.3. And last year's class was 100% graduation. What I want to point out to you is that when you first look at this data, you might ask, well, why is it at 98 and 99, and what happened to the 100%? The less than 100% represents a withdrawal of a student from the class in which they don't indicate where they're going. So they might be moving, they might be relocating with their family, but the withdrawal is to another educational setting during that attrition process. So that's the first criteria that we have to look at as far as the bonus is concerned.
Just a question for me. From the state target, the 80%, what criteria do they use to come up with 80% when we're, frankly, almost 20 points higher than that almost all the time? It would seem to me if I was setting that target, I might want to maybe make it a little smaller, make it a little more difficult to hit. What's the rationale behind there, that 80%? Is that based on all schools?
Right, so for example, I think if you were to look at all of the public schools across the Commonwealth, there are schools, particularly urban schools or gateway city schools, that significantly struggle with attendance, and then graduation rate. Students drop out, they go to work for their families, etc. There have been years past where we've been given a target of 85, as high as 85, but I think when they comparatively look at the whole of the context, there are some schools that significantly struggle in the urban areas to
So, for future reference, if we chose to change that to some other demographic that'd be more adjusted to what it is that we're used to, it would be more realistic in terms of being able to put it to lift the bar as opposed to just shoot it in the air, hope the ducks fly by.
So, you actually raise a very good point.
Animal husbandry program.
Clearly, Terry and I, have plenty of animal analogies that go around. One thing that is reminded each time we do this is that you have to be aware of contract language that is essentially 3 years old when you go to analyze, right? And I said because we obviously re-examine the language on negotiation cycles. And that's expected. In fact, Michael already brought that to my attention and say, we should take some notes as we always do this time around to see what maybe we want to change for the next time. Let's look at that language carefully. It says that we have met the DESC state target for accountability, 80%. So as you said, it's shooting fish in a barrel. It's not very challenging. But let's look at the rest of it. It says, or has improved over the comparable 4-year graduation rate for the class of 2014. Now that is actually impossible. 100%. Where are we going, Jerry? 101, 102, we can't do that. So we have to be careful in both directions, that we create an incentive target, but not an impossible number, and not one that is ridiculously low either.
Right.
So there's one example of a criterion that we're going to have to examine how we want to rewrite that.
Yeah.
So it achieves a lofty goal, but not unreasonable.
Right. Good observation.
The next one here, just before I move on, I will note that says or, right? And the or is important, as you know, in legalese. Ors and ands have a hugely different meaning. And so, the or would be the 80%. Right? So what if we didn't improve? It would go back to we met the 80%. Right? So we want to watch our ors and ands.
Yep. Agreed.
Moving on to the second one, on the 2017 AYP report, that clearly we would want to make sure that we have met our adequate yearly progress. And those are targets that Ms. Swayze talked about recently in her MCAS report for English, math, and science. What's interesting is that AYP at this point is now an antiquated term. That if you recall back when, we had those trend lines that were pointing up to a very futuristic year of 2014, 2016, and we're beyond that now. And now we're looking at things in terms of SGP, student growth percentiles, and things of that nature. So we're going to have a language change around this. But nonetheless, would you talk about AYP and SGP?
Sure. So AYP essentially represents a school's performance and participation. So essentially your students are all participating in MCAS and they are performing at a high level for you. And schools are awarded for those separate criteria, coming up with an AYP number. What the new focus has been on is on the individual student's growth percentile. And so as MCAS has been a part of a student's educational career from early on in the elementary years, the state is able to track a student's growth over time. So from one MCAS test in the 3rd grade to the 5th grade to the 8th grade and then to high school. And so with that being said, the state has set student growth percentiles that targets for all of the schools in Massachusetts. For the English, we were given a state target of 51% growth, in which we surpassed that. Our students average out at 70% growth. In mathematics, the state likewise gave us a state target of 51% growth, and then we exceeded that as well with 68.5% growth. The last criteria, science, does not have an SGP just yet because it's the newest exam, and there's not enough data on that yet to determine a student's growth over time. They don't take a formalized science assessment for MCAS until later on in their middle school years. So the state sets those targets for us, and then we obviously work to achieve those targets and then surpass them, which we have probably done.
I'm also not certain because of the multidiscipline aspect of science. So for example, a student could have taken life science, say biology in a lower grade, and be taking chemistry or physics or physical science or something in high school, and there may be an inability to calculate a growth percentile because of that. Literally, the apples and orange type scenario. So it remains to be seen if we're ever going to have an SGP in science. So once again, more things to consider. I think as we know from our MCAS scores, they really don't get much better. So I'd be very happy for one to maintain what we're doing. We're essentially skimming across the top of the water. You're always going to have some anomalies by 0.5 or 1% here and there. But for the most part, they're very stellar. We'll have to look at how we measure and maintain that in terms of a goal to be hitting for performance activity. Nonetheless, we have met criteria number 2. Number 3 was about our COP exam, the Certificate of Occupational Proficiency. This is another interesting aspect here. Many years ago, the state launched an endeavor to create COP exams that would mirror MCAS exams, particularly for career technical schools. So it's the high stakes accountability testing for the career technical programs. The state also realized rather quickly that that is a tremendous expense, that the prospect of a statewide testing system was prohibitively expensive. They did start with, I think back when it was, Mike, it was 10 million or so, 10 or 15 million that they had put towards it. And just to give you an idea, we spend that in the state on one subject in MCAS each year. Right? So, and that's a simple paper pencil type test, never mind anything that would have a performance nature or anything like that. And so what we did, we were in the early days very proactive with designing our own MCAS diagnostic type exams and so forth to be prepared for the effort. Well, we did the same thing with the COP, and we had already gone ahead and designed our own COP exams. Many of them, much like what the state was doing, are mirrored off of industry-based exams. So in dental, it's the Danby. In welding, it's the Notch exams. And we keep going here down the line. We essentially fashioned ourselves, if you will, after what was already in place for industry exams and tests. In some places, in some cases, we use them. So, for example, in auto tech, we use the ASE exams, Automotive Service Excellence exams, as a COP. And many shops have gone on to do just that, whether they haven't made one themselves or fashioned one after one that already exists, and they use that exam itself, and the student earns the credential. And so what you're seeing there on the purple sheet is the long-term practice that we've had ever since of giving those exams anyways, waiting for the state to formalize an effort to do so, but in the meantime, we're saying we're going to hold our students accountable and assess them on their progress. And so the reason I tell you the long history lesson there is because the reality is we still have language in here that talks about the DESE established COP exams. I don't think it's ever going to happen. In fact, I'll bet my next paycheck on it. However, we can, like we have been doing, create rigorous or utilize rigorous exams that already exist and certify our students' proficiency. We've been doing that, and the results are in front of you. They're passing it at very high levels, and we're proud of that. And we also have been able to credential our students because of that success. So I would say unequivocally we have met the intent of criteria number 3. But also I've given you some considerations of how we might revise that moving forward.
One aspect of point 3 I would also add is that's been very nice for our students is that when those assessments are happening, advisory committee members and employers will come in and assess the hands-on piece and component. So there's almost like they come in as judges, so to speak, and they're participating with the shop and the student. And a lot of times this data helps us to distinguish what students go on and compete in Skills USA. So it also provides us with that opportunity for our students as well, based upon how well they do on those exams.
I would like to point out, as she says that, 2 things you can see from that example. One, you can see why that would be prohibitively expensive at a statewide level. We have volunteerism of advisors who come in and will, put the students through performance exams and so forth. But it also reminds me of another thing, that some of the comp exams here take over a week to administer. That the students do it for an entire cycle or more. What we give is a window of time that we ask the instructors or the shops to administer their comps and get us the data, but they are extensive in that nature. They're both performance and written aspects of them, many times involving outside parties or agencies.
Anybody have any questions at all? I just got one comment. Information technology seems to be the one that's sticks out. My assumption is that you're going to take a look at that and see what the issue may or may not be.
Yes.
As well as tech.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying the very lowest one. But you got a couple there that obviously has brought that number down to that 96% level. So you've got some stellar ones like auto body. I'm really pleased to see that one where it is. It's a tremendous turnaround from where it was.
Sure.
And I'm sure that next time you report, if we get a report like this again, that the information technology and the auto tech, for instance, would also be somewhat improved.
I do know in both cases, I can't analyze for you why the numbers are what they are, but I do know that in both cases they are using industry exams. So for example, ASC in auto tech and in IT, they are using industry certification exams. So for example, Java tests or C++ tests or whatever they may be. Cisco, I think is one they were working on, and if that's the case, it's pretty tough to do. I think they would have to assess, for example, boy, here's a tricky one, right? Do you give a kid a Cisco test, which if you can pass Cisco in high school and actually become Cisco certified by the time you leave high school, it's pretty remarkable. But if you're only passing your shop at an 80% rate, is that a bad thing? Boy, we're going to have to be careful with that.
Yes.
To say, hey, come on, get us a better number here, 80%, and have them go to, let's say, a lesser expectation just to drive a better number. We're going to just be careful, but we'll look into both of those.
Okay.
Or all of them.
That's fair.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
We need a vote on whether or not the committee is in favor of advancing the performance award.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
We have a motion from John. We have a second. Julie. Any other further comment on it? Yes.
Regardless of the discussion over the metrics that were used, because naturally they go out of date after 4 years, I mean, I think I can speak for the negotiation subcommittee, which I've been a member on for a number of years, that I think we're really proud of having this type of an award with an evaluation over a 4-year period. I think it shows the partnership that we have with our teachers in that we can actually have performance-based evaluations of our academics and be in agreement with our teachers that that's appropriate and something that should be recognized. So, regardless of the language, because it gets stale after 4 years and we'll create a better one next time, I just wanted to make that comment.
I think the thing is worth mentioning to amplify what Anthony said, this was one of the first ones in the state, if not perhaps the region or country, where we actually had a target and the union, the teachers, agreed to that and were able to hold them accountable for a result with the teaching with the students. It was a big breakthrough because originally we were told that they saw no reason to do that because they were professionals and didn't need an incentive this way. But they finally came along board with it, and it has been, in my opinion, and I think in the union's opinion, something that they're very proud of. So it's worked well. All right, we have some comment. We had a motion, we had a second. We had some comment. Any other comment on this? I'd like to call for a vote then on item 9.4. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Anybody abstain? So moved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate that. Relay that to our faculty and staff. The last item I have for you is the school cancellation list, 9.5, provided for your information. In case you want to tune in, but I don't plan on canceling or delaying school this year.
There we go.
No snow this year.
No snow, no. We made it through that initial storm. I believe 4 of our spending towns wanted closed. We're still on pace. Any questions on 9.5? Mr. Vice Chairman, thank you, and members of the committee, have a nice evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
A procedural recommendation. It occurred to me that to be in compliance with the law, that Ms. Mitchell may wish to abstain from the motion that was just taken. Okay.
Okay.
So if we can amend that vote to that effect, unless anyone has an issue.
Should vote on that?
Can someone else make the second?
Yes. Chet, seconded it.
They have to be
Fair.
recorded in that
You're going to
fashion.
be recorded as an
An
abstention
abstention.
here. So you've got a yay and
Yeah.
a nay, and there's one abstention. You have a check?
No names.
Huh?
No names.
No. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, budget subcommittee report. Chair, John.
Yes, again, another year, I was elected chair again.
Congratulations.
And,
Congratulations,
you know,
John.
But now I have a new vice chair.
There you go. Things change.
Yes. So, budget season is upon us. Hope everybody's, checking their belts nice and tight, keep things nice as we can. And basically tonight, we just went over the calendar, and just basically the 8,000 function, the first review of it. Nothing really. It was a short meeting, and going forward, all our budget subcommittee meetings will be held in the superintendent's conference room. None of them will be held here, so there'll be no distraction for the committee versus the members coming in before the full school committee. So if you come in and we're not here, this is where we're at. They're having the meeting beforehand.
And the meetings will be posted in that fashion.
Yes, yeah, to be posted in that fashion, yes. And the meetings that are not here will start at 5:30. The ones that we don't have on the full school committee meeting in the calendar.
Bob.
The calendars will change. Yeah, so, I mean, Doc, I don't know if you have a synopsis or overview of the whole year to come. Budget, we don't have any state
Not
revenue
yet.
numbers or anything, but, we'll see where it shakes out.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, on that, we do have the official October 1 head count and what the appropriate increases and decreases are by town for each one of your own towns. You should be appraised of that so you know whether, for instance, if you had some, I think there was one town there, I can't remember the name of it, but I think it was one town that was like 17, increased 17 students. That's a significant increase to anybody's budget, especially the towns we serve. So you should know where you stand, make sure you understand that. If you got the wild swings that Doc and his administration has already alerted the folks to, but you should be appraised of it as well. Fair enough?
Yes, fair enough.
Okay, Superintendent Director's Report, Dr. Fitz.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, item 11.1. Periodically, we're asked to chime in and to indicate to our legislative contingent whether we recommend they oppose or support legislation. We were alerted by the Mass Association of Vocational Administrators that the apprenticeship electricians had continued to make changes in the hours to qualify that exceeded that which could be earned during a vocational technical high school 4-year experience. So we asked our electrical teachers to share their thoughts on it. They recommended that we oppose the legislation. The Mass Association of Vocational Administrators recommended that we oppose the legislation. So I therefore wrote to our legislative contingent and continue to receive responses from either our senators or reps that they would do what they could to not advance or support this legislation. And we prefer to work with any of the outside agencies for licensing or additional credentialing, and just ask them to be sensitive that, obviously we have high school requirements and all kinds of other things that a youngster would have to complete, and we want to create gateways of opportunity, not new obstacles, to gain entrance to these programs. So It appears that this legislation, Bill number H-136, will not be advanced in the viewpoint of our legislature.
Oh, cool, good.
Doc, is it, the last I heard this had gone to the Joint Committee for Consumer Protection, is it still with them, or?
It was, yes, the last I knew it was, which they feel to be a graveyard. Any other questions? Item 11.2. In our consistent pursuit of additional supportive donations over and above the dollars from our assessments, we continue to pursue additional money. I believe, let me just back up just a moment. I believe the school committee has communication from Representative Brian Murray supporting our position on that legislation as one of the more recent communications, and we'll continue to share others. In any case, the NESDEC group, one of the organizations which we're a member, New England School Development Council, was kind enough to award a $4,000 mini grant to us that will assist us in professional development, okay, so that we can have our staff increase their skills, particularly in the area of autistic skill sets for certain students. And so this grant was awarded. Any questions on that? Seeing none. In our traditional fashion, working with Nicole, I can't tell, I refuse to tell Nicole she's done all that she can do until she gets Dean Bank, but whatever. So that's on her lifetime quest. But anyway, so, but
You gotta go there.
the MILF, they've actually come here, but we're still working on it.
Yeah.
The Milford Federal Savings was one of the more recent that awarded the gift of $3,500 that we use for the gas and maintenance of our vehicles that use the projects. And we conveyed a thank you to the CEO of the bank and their board. Item 11.2C, we received $4,500 from Bristol Meadows Company Open, in the more recent award. And we, I believe that we shared with the school committee and just email version just to make you aware that kind of an indication of our grant pursuits, that when I met someone who was in charge of the foundation of the hometown bank at the walk for the staff member for the health issue, he indicated that he would consider supporting, so I knew they wrote to him. And so we're in pursuit of another award there. So we're going to continue to do that. As you look at grants, I know we've had a pretty good discussion in response to Mr. Yitz's request for our process and information. You might also notice that when we submit an application and we're not successful, we don't give up, and that we're going to go back out, all right? And we're trying to be given a second bite on the apple, if you will, with the skills grant of the governor's office. And so we're currently in pursuit of that, and we're going to continue to do that. So, any questions on any of those? Seeing none, moving on. If the committee member in any way is aware of other sources, if you let us know, we'd be glad to pursue that, investigate them, and add that to our ability to do more things. We've had a variety of visitors that come through the school, and we have more that are scheduled. The recent visitors include 2 members of the National Latino Educational Institute from Chicago, accompanied by a professor from Boston College. And we were able to provide information to them about what we do and how we do it. And they wish to replicate Blackstone Valley Tech and its design in Chicago for the minority populations. WBUR reached out to us and asked to come visit to interview students and staff members for a broadcast that they ran.
This is WBUR, as all things considered.
Sounds like this. There it is.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
This is WBUR, as all things considered. I'm Lisa Mullins. Troy LaFond is a polite and determined high school senior from Bellingham. He got top grades in AP chemistry and language. He plans to go into aerospace engineering, and then?
I want to work on rockets and drones that would go into space and hopefully eventually get humans back in space and onto planets and moons.
Meet the new breed of vocational school student. LaFond is in the engineering track of Blackstone Valley Regional Vocational Technical High School in Upton. Vocational schools are no longer considered repositories for students who can't hack the academics of traditional high school or kids who have little aspiration. VocaTech schools today have rigorous academics and hands-on training. And the schools are increasingly seen as a 21st century employer's treasure chest, as places that are preparing the future workforce for a radically changed landscape of jobs. All this week, WBUR and our Bostonomics team are focusing on the future of work. As we're hearing in our series, some of the fields with the biggest job growth are healthcare, computers, and food service.
So these are from a dinner we did the other night. Caramelized onion and goat cheese croissants.
It would be rude not to.
This is a huge commercial kitchen for the culinary arts program at Blackstone Valley. One student is standing in front of a big pile of chicken breast she's chopping up. Others are cooking a slew of quesadillas. Across the way is the machine shop. That's where a senior, Michelle Yitz from Grafton, is sitting at a computer. She loves manufacturing. She's made metal chess pieces and created her own roses made of copper and brass. She's also learning multimedia, an industry of the future. She plans to combine the two fields.
I definitely want to do something with media that kind of advocates for manufacturing, because when I came in here, I knew nothing about it. I thought it was a dirty, disgusting place where you push buttons and you didn't do anything. But I want to kind of help show people the reality of what manufacturing is.
Michelle Yitz and Troy LaFond plan to go to four-year colleges. Last year, 70% of Blackstone students went on to four-year schools. But there are so many kids who want to follow in their footsteps and go to Voc schools, Massachusetts cannot keep up with the demand. As of 2015, there were 3,200 students on waiting lists for vocational tech schools in the state. Meanwhile, 75% of Massachusetts employers say they can't find qualified people to fill their jobs in everything from manufacturing to retail to finance. That's according to a recent survey that found that many business owners would like to see VocaTech education expanded. The longtime superintendent and lead cheerleader for the Blackstone Regional VocaTech School District is Michael Fitzpatrick. He says VocaTech schools have come a long way from the days they had to use donated surplus machines.
The equipment you would have found here 25 years ago was dated 1953 or before. And therefore, it trained skills that were no longer needed or competitive for the job market at the time. It certainly didn't allow employers or manufacturers or machinists to create and compete opportunities in their environments.
Now, in the manufacturing shop we're standing in, there's sophisticated computerized design equipment to be used with 3D printer applications. Students even use 3D printing in the culinary arts program.
And when you can see a culinary arts students doing a food-based coliseum that resembles that of Rome, you can see the artistic work, the science work, the social studies, the creative writing, the imagination that takes place. That forms an ability for that individual to springboard into all kinds of new opportunity and innovation and add new values wherever he or she would go.
So you think that when a business comes in and says, what I really need is, for instance, critical thinking skills, communication skills, are the kids who are learning to use a 3D printer learning that?
There is an array, there's a menu of unlimited opportunities to promote critical thinking. And vocational technical teachers from both the academic and vocational side are masterful at creating learning opportunities that capture the new technologies and the new skill sets to respond to this new challenge.
Fitzpatrick says VocaTech schools in the state are required to involve business leaders in the development of their currula. Think of one meeting that you've had with a business leader and how that has changed what's happening in the classroom.
Consigli Construction is one of the largest construction firms in the Commonwealth. In our interactions with them and with other smaller contractors, they've indicated that students need teaming skills, communication skills, and drafting skills, not only framing or actual hands-on labor activities.
And what do you do with that information?
The teacher would then work with other members of the team to reconfigure what lessons would be taught.
So how do you teach when you don't know what the challenge is going to be in 10 years? When you don't know where certain technologies are going, how do you prepare for that?
We focus on behavior and learning process, not on a specific topic or task. You have to have an instructional staff willing to constantly add new skills, new licenses, new training, new software applications to their teaching.
Can you give us an example?
An example from construction technology. Years ago, if you're building a kind of a roof activity, you might use a chalk line, okay, for the roof construction to make sure that you were geometrically aligned as far as the shingles. Today, you probably use a laser.
Yeah, because I think probably a lot of students here, hear that many of the jobs of the future are going to be done by robots or drones, and so they're probably wondering what's left for me.
That's an interesting analogy or metaphor. In my opinion, years ago, the vocational technical training may have viewed the student as the robot. Today, the student will program, design, and repair the robot. They won't be the robot.
That's Michael Fitzpatrick, superintendent of the Blackstone Valley Regional Vocational Technical School District. The state spends about $5,000 more per student in vocational high schools than for students in traditional schools. That's because of the smaller class size and the expense of equipment. In an effort to help VocaTech schools expand capacity and purchase new equipment, the state gave $36 million in grants to Voc schools and programs and to community colleges over the last 2 years. It's going to give an additional $45 million over the next 3 years. Tomorrow on Morning Edition, there's a looming shortage of home health aides for the elderly. We'll take a look at high-tech startups creating new devices to ease the pressure on caregivers. For all of WBUR's Bostonomics series, The Future of Work, including interactive graphs showing what industries are growing and which are declining, go to our website, wbur.org.
It's interesting. We received a beautiful message of how much they enjoyed the interaction with our students. And we really wanted them to focus on students. None of that was rehearsed. It's a one-time take. One of the things that the radio station group wanted to capture was the noise of the laboratory behind them. So they had some machine shop, things like that. Nicole was kind enough to do some of the lead activities. And so when she got into culinary, they thought it might be best for her to taste some of the French fries and things. and so
She's chewing in the background?
Don't beat me to the punchline. So people said to me, I said to Nicole, I said, you hear the clatter of pots and pans, and you hear the machinery operating or the 3D printer. And I said, can you see people saying to me, what was that noise on the radio? Oh, that was Nicole eating French fries.
Thought I heard chewing.
She began to chew quietly. Anyway, that was the interview with the radio people. And we've already received acknowledgement from the vocational community and others relative to
Nice.
Best marketing tool we have is our students, what they do and all that they can do. We had retired generals from across the world, almost 80 of them, who, from the National Defense University, which promotes relationships through Washington, D.C., and these fellowships that bring these former military leaders from across to our school. Now, a couple of years ago, they asked to come for a quick visit, and in fairness, Nipmuc did this before we did it, and the group discovered us because of the geographical location. And they asked if they could stop by here. So they stopped by and they saw the facility. And a year later, they asked if they could come for half the day instead of just an hour or two. And so they came for, and this time they asked if they could come for a day. And so we don't know if they're going to see him for a week. But so they seem to really connect with, and you would imagine the military with all its qualifications of skill sets, right? Which is really where the cops come from. Okay, the certificate of occupational proficiency. They're all cross-referenced with a data bank at the national level in these skill sets and things like that, and they cross over to the standards and licensing in many of the programs. In any case, what a way to get ready for Veterans Day to interact. And these people, they're from Ukraine, they're from New Zealand, they're just from everywhere. Okay, and they're very humble. They're very polite, and they're very inquisitive. They ask lots of questions, and they seem to enjoy themselves. So, and we did not charge them the tour fee.
We sell them snacks. We didn't sell them snacks, huh?
They did pay for their lunch. So we didn't charge them a fee. We thanked them for their service and their respective countries.
Yeah, take them to the store.
Any questions on that? Nicole, thank you for your help with that. Okay. Seeing no questions, 11.4, I think you have the new parent newsletter, which has a number of dates in there. And we encourage you to take a peek at that. Make sure you're there, sure. That concludes my report, Mr.
Item 12, new business. Anybody have any new business? I do have something here that Joe Hall had asked me to read. It is from the Greater Milford Ballet Association. They are having a production of the Nutcracker Ballet. This year presents BVT senior Megan O'Brien as a featured soloist. Performances will be held at the King Philip High School in Rentham on December 16th and 17th at 2 o'clock. Tickets are on sale at the Dean Dance Studio. The phone number is 508-473-3354 or by calling Lucia Copeland at 774-287-9205. Just a bit on Megan. Megan has appeared in the Nutcracker for the last 9 years and has been working very hard to perfect her dances, and we hope that many in her community will come out to support her. So we congratulate her on that, and obviously 9 years worth of work on that, and again a BVT first to have this young lady be out there at the Nutcracker Suite. So if you get an opportunity to, Nutcracker Ballet, if you get an opportunity to go to that, please consider it. Thank you. Any other new business? Yes.
Doc, I'd like an update for everybody on the football team, how good we're doing this year.
The football team is scheduled to play Saturday at Foley's Stadium in Worcester at 11 o'clock against Wacona High School, the Western champion. And whoever is victorious in that game advances to Gillette Stadium.
Oh, cool.
That'll be a good game.
The Traft family has expanded the availability of the Super Bowls to all 8 divisions.
Oh, good.
And gone into Friday night and Saturday, because they couldn't accommodate more than 6 on one day.
Right.
So now it would be, I think, 2 games played on Friday and then 6 games played on Saturday. So
Is that the following weekend?
It's I think it's December 1st and 2nd.
1st and 2nd.
Okay. But you got to win to get there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, one at a time.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be a good game.
Plus, we also have the Thanksgiving game. The captains from both Nipmuc and Valley Tech will be having lunch here. And if both teams are in their Super Bowl efforts, then you'll probably see JV players on both sides of the Thanksgiving game.
Yeah.
That's
That's good news.
It's been a great season. Yeah. So.
Item number 13, items for the good of the committee. Anybody have anything else they'd like to add or anything they'd like to bring forward to anybody? Seeing none. Next regularly scheduled school committee meeting is December 21st, 17. And meeting closure. Meeting closed as declared by the chair. I can close the